in the heart of Tudor England, where the word of the king was law. Speaking against him was dangerous, but to claim that God himself spoke to you about the king, that was fatal. This is the story of a young woman who dared to do just that. Her name was Elizabeth Barton. She was young, she was poor, and to the powerful men who ruled the kingdom, she was utterly invisible. Until the visions began. It started quietly in a small village in Kent. A servant girl, barely a woman, falling into violent trances. Her body would convulse, her voice would change, and words would pour out of her words that weren't her own. She spoke of heaven and hell, of sin and salvation. At first, it was dismissed as the ravings of a sick girl, but then her prophecies started coming true. People she prayed for recovered from illness. Events she foretold came to pass. The whispers grew. The girl from Kent could see the future. She was a messenger from God. The whispers grew. The girl from Kent could see the future. She was a messenger from God. News of the Holy Maid traveled fast. Priests and local officials came to witness her trances. They left, convinced they had seen a miracle. Her fame spread from the muddy lanes of her village to the hallowed halls of monasteries. Learned men, archbishops, and even the king's own advisors sought her counsel. Elizabeth was no longer an invisible servant. She was a national phenomenon, a living saint. People called her the Nun of Kent. And then her visions took a perilous turn. They began to focus on one man above all others, King Henry VIII. The king was desperate for a male heir. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, had failed to give him a son. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, had failed to give him a son, and his eyes had turned to the captivating and he sought to have his marriage annulled, a move that would defy the Pope and break with the Catholic Church. It was into this political firestorm that Elizabeth Barton's visions now stepped. She declared that God had shown her the king's fate. She saw him standing on the brink of damnation. Her message was terrifyingly clear and delivered with divine authority. If Henry put aside his lawful wife, Catherine, he would not be king for a month longer. He would, she prophesied, die a villain's death. Imagine the audacity. A low-born woman, speaking with the authority of heaven, directly challenging the most powerful man in the realm. Her words were not just a spiritual warning, they were a political threat. In an age of absolute monarchy, where the king's will was seen as God's will, Elizabeth offered a chilling alternative, that God was, in fact, against the king. For a time, the king hesitated. Elizabeth's influence was immense. The common people adored her. Powerful figures at court, those loyal to Queen Catherine in the Old Faith, saw her as their champion. Her prophecies gave voice to a growing unease across the kingdom. She was a symbol of resistance, a focal point for all who opposed the king's great matter. To move against her would be to risk public outrage. Henry and his chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, understood the danger she posed. She wasn't just a nuisance, she was a threat to the stability of the state itself. Henry had built his power on the foundation of unquestioning obedience. Elizabeth Barton offered something far more powerful, belief. And belief could not be commanded. Elizabeth Barton offered something far more powerful, belief. And belief could not be commanded. It had to be broken. The campaign against her was methodical and ruthless. Cromwell, a master of political maneuvering, began to gather evidence. Elizabeth and her closest followers were arrested under intense interrogation, day after day, in the cold, damp cells of the Tower of London. Their resolve began to crumble. Her supporters were pressured to recant, to confess that it was all a hoax. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. The Holy Maid was now a devious fraud. The divine visions were declared to be nothing more than a carefully orchestrated conspiracy designed to incite rebellion. Public sermons were preached across London, denouncing her as a heretic and a traitor. She was paraded through the streets, forced to stand before the crowds and confess her deception. The saint was being systematically unmade, her reputation dismantled piece by piece. Was it a true confession, or were the words spoken under duress by a terrified young woman facing an unimaginable fate? We will never know for sure what happened in those interrogation rooms, but the outcome was certain. On April 20th, 1534, Elizabeth Barton was taken to Tyburn, the notorious site of public execution. Alongside the priests who had once championed her, she was hanged. Her head was severed and placed on a spike on London Bridge, a gruesome warning to any who would dare to follow her example. The king had silenced the voice that defied him. Her name was erased, her memory suppressed. But the questions she raised linger in the shadows of history. Was Elizabeth Barton a cynical manipulator who used religion for fame and influence? Was she a mentally unstable girl, genuinely believing in visions that were merely delusions? Or was she something else entirely? A woman of unshakable faith, who believed so deeply in her divine mission that she was willing to speak truth to a tyrant, no matter the cost. Her story is more than just a forgotten footnote in the Tudor saga. It is a timeless and tragic exploration of the clash between faith and power. It reveals what happens when personal conviction meets the unyielding force of the state, and when a prophecy becomes so dangerous that the only way to stop it is to destroy the prophet. The Nun of Kent was silenced, but her story forces us to ask, who is more dangerous? The one who claims to speak for God, or the king who believes he is one? Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing for more journeys into the hidden corners of history.